updates and redesign. So it's sort of vintage. And anything you want to ask me about the book or the photography, I'm here. We also have Jorgen's son, Dylan, in the house. And I want to take the moment and say thank you to Oscar at the gallery and to, and I should say thank you to Johan, but I think he left. He's coming back. Johan Bergmark has curated the exhibition and worked with Prince. So any questions about this, just let me know, I'm here. And now to the main, we have a very special guest here today. And I'm glad to see you all, and I understand why you're here. Nicki Germaine is in the house, and she has a very unique book. Well, I'm sure you all know about it, but I have to tell you anyway, because this is a documentation from a period in time when the E Street Band in the formation had played like 6 months together. Yeah, about that. And there's really not anything like this out there, book-wise, and very little written about this particular period. So it's a beautiful book, and it has a foreword by Bruce.
Yes.
And it has also words from Gary, from Bob Santelli, and from Nicki herself. So we're so glad to have you here, Nicki.
Thank you.
And Nicki will talk to, of course, everybody. If you have questions, just let me know and let Nicki know. We'll be here for you. So very welcome, and a big hand for Nicki.
Thank you. I thought it might be good if I just background.
Sure.
I was 26 living in Houston, Texas. I met the CBS record promoter, Mike Pilot, who was promoting Bruce, and the record company wanted to drop him. And it was a pretty, and also Mike Appel owned all Bruce's music, his manager owned all his music, and Mike Appel was there as well. And nobody in Texas knew Bruce Springsteen, and Mike Appel convinced Liberty Hall to book the band for 14th the first night. And what happened was, because I knew this record promoter, we can't even remember how we met each other. He called me and he said, "Nicki, come down to Liberty Hall and bring your camera." And so I said, okay. So I went down to the hall and I took a camera and 2 lenses, and I met the band, and I noticed immediately there was a difference with this band than other bands backstage. They were very serious, and Bruce sat off by himself very quietly. And most of the time I wound up talking with Clarence, no surprise to anybody who knows anything about Clarence. He was older, more mature, more self-confident, and very charismatic, and he really just loved people. So it was really easy to talk to him. And anytime you have like a 26-year-old chick taking pictures of like 24-year-old guys, easy. And they weren't, accustomed to having people taking their picture. It was 1974. The band consisted of Bruce, Clarence, Gary, Danny Federici, and Ernest Boone Carter on drums and David Sanchez on piano. And what had happened was Vinny got kicked out of what was originally his own band. He was just a little too much. He had gone over the top, so he got booted out of the band. So they had hired Boom to be the new drummer. And Boom and David had known each other. Actually, Gary played with them. They were all good friends, Gary and Boom and David. So it was a half black, half white band coming to Texas. And they were a little nervous about it. And they didn't really need to be, but they of course would think that, coming from the north. So Liberty Hall was a very liberal environment. It was small. It was like about 350 to 400 people max. Very basic, really laid back, very unadorned, let's put it that way. And backstage was just one big room with fluorescent lights. That's it. And so somebody said, how hard was it to, photograph backstage? It's like, there was no reason not to. I mean, there were no minders, no security, there was none of that. And so they were very quiet backstage, and but when they went on stage, it was a different story. It just exploded. It was a completely different experience. So they were booked for 4 performances for 4 nights. And the promoter, Mike Pilot, had invited all the press and anybody that he thought might be a good person to invite, like from either radio or a newspaper or whatever. But the other thing that happened was the local public radio station always broadcast the Thursday night shows at Liberty Hall. And by the way, every musician you can think of wanted to play there. It was just funky enough and cool enough. Everybody, you name it, they wanted to play there. So they broadcast the show, and as soon as they did that, it went viral. Everybody, they had to add 3 more shows for the next three nights. So there were 2 more shows for each of the next 3 nights. So there were 7 shows, and I photographed all 4 nights, all 7 shows. And I also got the band to come out one afternoon to take some pictures in front of the venue, which was like herding cats, you know. It's really hard to get a group shot. But, you know, I managed to get a couple of group shots. The other thing about this is that at the time, a lot of people were shooting black and white. I honestly didn't think about that because I was working for a commercial photographer and we shot color and black and white. So I grabbed Ektachrome and I grabbed Tri-X and I went down there and I met Pete Souza, who, if any of you know, Pete Souza was Obama's official photographer in the White House, and if you don't know his work, look him up because he's amazing, and he's published a number of books, and his book designer is also my book designer, just by coincidence, totally. But I've met him, and he's like, you know, my hero. And he asked me, he said, "You were shooting color then?" He said, "I didn't shoot color till 1978, and I just explained to him that it was second nature to me because I worked in the studio and we did it all the time." So that's why you see half of the photographs in color and half in black and white. And if I had tried to do this book before the technology that exists today for color, scanning the transparencies and working on them on Adobe Photoshop, it would have not have been the same. It would have been a much poorer quality. So everything about this book coming out at this time has been kind of an organic thing that happened. I didn't even think about doing this until out of the blue Gary contacted me in 2012 saying, "Hey, you still have those pictures?" And I said, "Well, yes." And I sent him some and he said, "Well, you've got to do something with these." Well, fast forward in 2018, Gary and I became a couple. and then during COVID, he said, "Hey, can I send some pictures to Bruce?" And I went, "Oh, here we go." So he sent some pictures to Bruce, and Bruce loved them. And as a result, we went ahead and decided I would go ahead and do the book. And for any of you that are interested in the future, there are going to be prints, individual prints of some of these photographs available as well. So that's in a nutshell. If any of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can't promise you this, but everybody in the band, crew, and everybody, they're on a boat right now. I'm missing the boat, which is missing the boat. Anyway, there's a possibility that they might be able to come here, some of them after they get off the boat, if we're still around. So I just want to let you know that could be like much later, like around 5:30 or so, you know. So that's it.
Germaine, everybody.
Thank you.